Oh hey there nerds, and welcome to my lovely abode. You may be wondering what exactly I'm doing here. Well, my friends, I'm here to tell you stories of ages past. Because just like I'm reusing this totally not meme, video games and media oftentimes reuse things as well. I'm of course talking about mythology. It's been a passion of mine for a while. I've been trying to create this series that can delve into it while letting you guys learn about their origins. And that's why today, we're talking about some Norse mythology for you Fire Emblem Heroes fans. So, without further ado...
Hey!
What was that?
Flap, 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 flap. Faye! Xander.
Okay then. Alright, while I try to figure out where this little guy got in, it's time for you guys to learn about Laevatein, the magical sword that somehow became a magical girl. I don't know how that works, but it should be interesting. So how would one define Laevatein? Well, that's pretty simple, and not exactly fair. So instead, let's dive into Laevatein as a character in Heroes, as well as her story, and then also talk a bit about more of that mythology, shall we? But let's do it in a style that only 90s kids can really understand. So let's say you haven't played Fire Emblem Heroes. In the second book of its story, Faye introduces us to Laevatein, the youngest daughter in the royal lineage of Muspell. Muspell is a fiery nation whose main export seems to be third-degree burns. Laevatein also happens to be wielding a sword by the name of Laevatein, which really calls into question which came first, the girl or the sword. And when it comes to personality, what was your whole thing, Laevatein?
I am Laevatein.
Helpful. But along with Laevatein, we have to talk about the rest of the Muspell royal lineage. This is Surtr, king of Muspell, father of Laevatein, wielder of the fiery axe known as Sinmara. If he were to be defined in emoji, it would be fire. And the term, "it's lit fam," is a lot more literal with him than I really want it to be. Then we have Laevatein, the elder sister, shrewd, tough, and is extremely protective of her younger sister. She is also the best waifu in the entire game. And no, don't at me about that one. Actually, on second thought, if you could, please do actually at me here, because I would like to know where all these birds are coming from. And now that you've learned about this weird family, it's time to take a look at their origins. In truth, Laevatein's involvement in Norse mythology is sparse, only appearing in one poem in the Eddas. She's only mentioned once, and that is within the story of Fjölsvinnsmál. This poem is actually the second in the series known as Svipdagsmál. These poems detail the journey of Svipdag as he tries to find his destined bride Megloth after being forced out by his stepmother. There's a whole lot of crazy in this, at least with the first story detailing things like resurrecting his real dead mother to get some help and all other kinds of craziness. But we're here to address Fjölsvinnsmál. And in this continuation, Svipdag ends up under an assumed name, as he tries to find his way into this massive castle that is said to house Megloth. Sadly, for him, the castle is walled off and guarded by a giant. Well, sucks for him. This, my friends, is the giant Fjölsvith. And he is here to guard Megloth, which means that he is here to threaten our hero. Luckily for Svipdag, though, there is one thing the giant does enjoy doing, and that is a question and answers game where the two end up getting into this. Svipdag is asking the questions and Fjölsvith is providing the answers, and there's one specific question we'll be diving into. And yes, while I did say it was a small part, you can really see how deeply they dug to try and create these characters. Sadly, I can't do an epic tone, so I hired a very beautiful man to do it for me.
Now answer me, Fjölsvith, the question I ask. For now the truth would I know. What weapon can send Vathofnir to seek the house of hell below?
Now this may seem like a strange question, but Fjölsvith is asked how to deal with the creature known as Vathofnir, a golden demonic rooster that is said to nestle in the trees and branches that connect these worlds. And wouldn't you know it, Fjölsvith has a solution to this whole bird problem. I can definitely sympathize with that one. Wait a second, is there one in my hair? Alright, so how about we get back to that story?
Laevatein is there, that lopped with ruins once made by the doors of death. In Leyarn's chest, by Sinmara lies it. In 9 locks fasten it firm.
And finally, we get the actual name drop. The only weapon, according to Fjölsvinnsmál, that can kill the demonic cock is the legendary blade Laevatein. Sifdag is indeed a clever boy, as his intentions are maybe, just maybe, he can slay Vidofnir, cut that rooster up into little bits, and then use it to distract the guard dogs that are surrounding the castle. Oh, did I forget to mention that they're guard dogs? They're guard dogs. Laevatein, however, is currently being housed in Muspellheim, under the watchful gaze of Sinmara, but there is so much more to talk about here. So to get this ball rolling, we have to talk about Surtr, as in the real Surtr. But in truth, a lot of what happens in Heroes and in other media tends to mirror exactly how he acts in Norse mythology. Surtr is a Jotun who rules over Muspellheim, the world of primordial flame. Within Norse mythology, Surtr really has only one goal, and it's related to Ragnarok. At end times, Surtr is said to brandish his own blade, take up his army, and march upon the Aesir. His massive blade is said to harness the power of the suns themselves. It's said that Surtr will kill the god Frey, and the world will be turned to ash and sink into the sea. But Surtr is a strange one in Heroes. He wields no blade and instead is given an axe. That axe is Sinmara, the magical axe that somehow does damage to you without even trying. Sinmara, just like Laevatein, is only mentioned within Fjölsvinnsmál. Her role, however, is quite important. Due to how the poem is worded, it often implies connections to Surtr, and it tells us that Sinmara is possibly Surtr's companion, or even his wife. Her role is to protect the legendary sword Laevatein. The issue here, however, is the paradoxical nature to obtain it. The only way to retrieve the sword from her requires cutting off a wing from Vidofnir. The wings are described as golden sickles, and presenting it to Sinmara will allow you to obtain Laevatein. But you see, it's impossible to even attack Vidofnir without Laevatein, and that means that Sinmara will be keeping the blade. Then we have to talk about this character. You know, this strange one here. Loped? Who the hell is that? That is another name for the trickster god, Loki. And according to this poem, there seems to be a lot more going on between Muspell and Loki, as it's hinted that Laevatein may in fact be a creation of Loki, or perhaps even stolen by Loki before given up to Surtr. Either way, Loki's involvement with Laevatein is undeniable, and they even played around with this in Heroes for a little bit. And then we have to talk about this. Oh my god, guys, it's a chest. What could be inside? Well, look at that, it's Laevatein. Oh, and that chest that weapon is stowed in? Yeah, that's Laevatein. No, seriously, this is the whole bit there. Laevatein in Heroes is a play on the fact that in Norse mythology, she was a chest that protected the sword Laevatein. And people still have time to complain about other people's waifus' personalities in Heroes. Guys, they took a mythological chest and turned it into a real one. Now for one final segment before we wrap this all up. Welcome to Laevatein Through the Ages. Heroes isn't the only game to use Laevatein as a foundation for a weapon, let alone a character. If you played any other RPGs out there, you may have run across a sword or even a staff with this name. And that's the fun bit. Laevatein has many translations, but it all comes down to how you interpret it. Laevatein can be known as what is called a kenning. It's an old archaic turn of phrase, and chances are if you were forced to read Beowulf within high school, you may be familiar with these. Just there's no sexy Angelina Jolie. Sorry guys. The more modern example that I can think of to give you what a kenning is would be something like a metaphor or a simile. Something like, say, oh hey look, it's a bookworm. But we're not talking about a literal worm made out of books, no, we're talking about someone who's quite literate and really enjoys reading. Many believe Laevatein is a kenning. Its literal translation is hurting stick or wounding wand, which certainly sounds a lot more like something, say, like a wand or a staff. And this is why in other games you might find that Laevatein is actually a staff, or something akin to that. Hell, in Heroes they even made an off mention to this by making an alt for Laevatein into a staff user. And it's not only Laevatein that can be seen as a kenning. Laevatein was seen by one of the translators, Henry Adam Bellows, as a possible kenning for Lover of Ill, which seems to implicate Loki even more. The rest of this is left quite vague, as often is with Norse mythology. But I've given you 2 stanzas of a poem to kind of give you an idea of where exactly we draw inspirations from. And yes, while Laevatein, and even Sinmara can be seen as small little bit players within the mythos, it's hard to imagine that these small things turned into massive characters that have become fan favorites. And I don't think this will stop anytime soon. As for Svipdag and his quest for his bride, well, wouldn't you know it, Fjölswith was looking for one simple answer. He asked Fjölswith, who was Menglu's true love? And the answer, that surprised him. And wouldn't you know it, it happened to be a man by the name of Svipdag. Taken aback by this, he of course reveals his true name, and Fjölswith moves to the side, the gates opened, and there's his bride waiting for him with open arms. Man, I really do enjoy some good love stories. I hope you guys learned something along the way. As for me though, we kinda have a lot of birds here. Thank God they're all asleep. I'm not sure how they keep getting in. It's like they just pop into existence and I have to deal with this crap. Just think, sages. What would Surtr do in this situation? Our next chapter takes us somewhere cold, dark, and filled with death.
I am death itself.